The silent challenger, the Krell Arena on Terracon 9, stood as a monument to savagery. A vast circular coliseum carved from black stone that had absorbed the blood of countless fighters for over 3 centuries. Its jagged spires pierced the rust-colored sky, visible from kilometers in every direction, a warning and a promise of the spectacle within. Today, the arena was filled to capacity. Over 20,000 aliens from across the known galaxy packed into the tiered seating that surrounded the sand-covered fighting pit. The crowd's roar was deafening, a cacophony of clicks, growls, and screeches in a dozen different languages. They had come to witness blood and glory, to see death dealt in increasingly creative ways. But most of all, they had come to see the notorious beasts of the Krell Arena do what they did best: tear apart whatever unfortunate creature was thrown into the pit with them. Dr. Marcus Vega stood alone in the holding chamber beneath the arena floor, his lean frame draped in the simple gray tunic given to all combatants. At 42, his dark hair was streaked with premature silver, his olive skin, weathered from years of fieldwork on distant worlds. His hands, now empty, were usually filled with scientific instruments, not weapons. He was a xenobiologist, not a fighter, a fact that seemed to amuse his captors greatly. Human, the guard grunted, the translator around its thick neck converting the series of clicks into standard. Time to die with honor. Marcus met the insectoid's compound eyes calmly. I don't plan on dying today. The Krell guard's mandibles twitched in what Marcus recognized as their species' version of laughter. They all say that. The gate before him began to rise, sunlight streaming in along with the thunderous sound of the crowd. Marcus took a deep breath, centering himself. He had not planned on ending up here when he'd come to study the rare flora of Terracon 9's northern continent. But the Krell didn't take kindly to unauthorized research on their planet, especially not from humans, a species they considered dangerously unpredictable. The choice they had given him was simple: face the arena or face execution. At least in the arena there was a chance, however slim, of survival. As Marcus stepped out onto the sand, the crowd's roar intensified. He squinted against the harsh sunlight, taking in the sea of alien faces surrounding him. Directly above, the arena floor, in an ornate box decorated with the skulls of fallen champions, sat the Krell Overseer, a massive specimen of his kind, with a carapace that gleamed midnight blue in the sunlight. "Behold!" The announcement echoed across the arena in multiple languages. "A human who dared trespass on sacred Krell territory. Let his punishment serve as a warning to all who would defy the empire of the swarm." Marcus remained still, ignoring the jeers and shouts from the crowd. He had studied the Krell extensively during his academic career. Their society was built on displays of dominance and submission, on the clear establishment of hierarchies through combat. They respected strength and despised weakness. But Marcus knew something the Krell did not. There were many forms of strength. Release the Shadowhounds. A gate on the far side of the arena ground open, and 3 massive creatures bounded out onto the sand. The Shadowhounds were the stuff of nightmares, 6-limbed predators with sleek black exoskeletons and elongated heads that ended in razor-sharp mandibles. Each was the size of an earth tiger, moving with the fluid grace of apex predators. Their eyeless faces turned toward Marcus, sensing his presence through the heat-detecting organs that lined their bodies. The crowd's excitement reached fever pitch. Shadowhounds were known for their speed and brutality, tearing apart their prey with methodical efficiency. No one had ever faced 3 simultaneously and survived. Marcus did not run. He did not cower. He did not reach for a weapon or look desperately for an escape. Instead, he planted his feet firmly in the sand, straightened his back, and closed his eyes. The arena fell suddenly, eerily quiet. The Shadowhounds approached cautiously, circling the lone human who stood motionless in the center of the arena. One of them darted forward, stopping just short of Marcus, its mandibles clicking rapidly. It sniffed the air, its head tilting in apparent confusion. Marcus remained perfectly still, his breathing deep and controlled. His eyes were closed, but his mind was alert, focused. Years of meditation practice had given him mastery over his body's autonomic responses, his heart rate, his adrenaline output, even his scent glands. Right now, he was making himself as non-threatening as possible, emitting none of the fear pheromones that would typically trigger a predator's attack instinct. The lead shadowhound took another tentative step forward, now close enough that Marcus could feel its hot breath on his skin. The crowd had fallen completely silent, bewildered by the unprecedented scene before them. The beasts that had torn apart countless fighters were hesitating, confused by the human who showed neither fear nor aggression. Marcus slowly opened his eyes, meeting the sensory organs of the lead shadowhound. He maintained his calm, projecting a sense of peaceful certainty through his gaze and posture. The beast tilted its head, mandibles now still, as if trying to understand the strange creature before it. Then, to the astonishment of everyone watching, the shadowhound backed away. It turned and loped back toward the gate it had emerged from, followed closely by its two companions. The three predators, famous for their bloodlust and ferocity, retreated without striking a single blow. The silence in the arena was absolute. 20,000 spectators sat in stunned disbelief. High above, the Krell overseer rose from his throne, his massive form trembling with rage, or perhaps something else, something that looked almost like fear. "Impossible," the translator boomed across the arena. "The human uses trickery, sorcery." Marcus remained in place, his gaze now lifted to meet the overseer's compound eyes. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm but carried clearly across the suddenly silent arena. No tricks, no weapons, just understanding. The overseer's mandibles clicked rapidly as he conferred with his advisors. After a moment, he raised one clawed appendage. "The human survives the first trial, but the games have only begun." A different gate opened, and 5 humanoid figures strode out onto the sand. The Nexus Warriors were the pride of Krell genetic engineering, created specifically for the arena, with enhanced strength, reflexes, and aggression. Standing over 2 meters tall, with translucent skin that revealed the complex machinery integrated into their muscular bodies, they were living weapons designed for one purpose: to kill. Each carried a different weapon, a curved blade, a spiked flail, a trident that crackled with energy, a barbed whip, and a set of serrated claws that extended from one warrior's knuckles. They spread out, surrounding Marcus with practiced precision. The crowd found its voice again, cheering as the warriors took position. This would be a proper fight, a display of skill and brutality that would wash away the strange disappointment of the Shadowhound's retreat. Marcus assessed his new opponents carefully. These were not beasts acting on instinct, but engineered fighters with tactical intelligence. His previous strategy would not work here, or at least not in the same way. The warrior with the energy trident made the first move, lunging forward with blinding speed. Marcus sidestepped, moving with a fluid grace that surprised the onlookers. He made no move to attack or disarm his opponent, simply avoiding the thrust, with minimal movement. The second warrior attacked from behind, whip lashing toward Marcus's legs. Again, he moved at the last possible moment, the barbed tip missing him by millimeters. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said quietly to the warriors, his voice carrying no judgment, only compassion. "You were made for more than mindless violence." The warriors hesitated, confused by the human's words and his refusal to fight back. Their programming demanded aggression, but something in Marcus's calm demeanor and steady gaze gave them pause. The crowd grew restless, shouting for blood. The overseer leaned forward on his throne, compound eyes fixed on the strange human who defied all expectations. "Kill him," the overseer commanded, his translator broadcasting the order across the arena. The warrior with the curved blade charged, swinging his weapon in a deadly arc aimed at Marcus's neck. At the last second, Marcus ducked and stepped inside the warrior's guard. Rather than attacking, he simply placed his palm against the warrior's chest, directly over where a heart would be in a natural being. "Feel your own existence," Marcus said softly. "You are more than your programming." The warrior froze, blade still raised, its translucent features contorted in what appeared to be confusion or inner conflict. The crowd fell silent once more, sensing that something extraordinary was happening in the sand below. The other warriors approached cautiously, weapons ready but no longer attacking with the same ferocity. Marcus turned slowly to face them all, his expression one of calm understanding rather than fear or aggression. "You were created to fight," he acknowledged, addressing all 5 warriors now. "But creation always exceeds its intended purpose. You can choose another path." The warrior with the energy trident lowered his weapon first, followed by the one with the barbed whip. The others hesitated, looking toward the overseer's box as if seeking direction. From his throne, the Krell overseer stood, his massive form shaking with rage. "Treachery, the human uses forbidden mind control." Marcus looked up at the overseer, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent arena. "I have no such ability. I am simply offering them choice, something your arena has never permitted." Crowd began to murmur, a sound that grew rapidly from confusion to discontent. Many had come expecting the usual blood sport, but what they were witnessing was something else entirely, something that challenged the very foundations of the arena's existence. "If you truly believe in combat as the measure of worth," Marcus called out to the overseer, "then face me yourself." Gasps rippled through the audience. No one challenged the overseer directly. It was unheard of, especially from a prisoner condemned to the arena. The overseer's compound eyes flashed with an unreadable emotion. For a long moment, he stared down at the lone human standing calmly amidst 5 of the deadliest warriors in the arena, none of whom were now making any move to attack. "Enough!" the overseer's voice boomed. "The human wishes for a true challenge? Then he shall have one." He raised a clawed appendage, making a complex series of gestures to his subordinates. A heavy silence fell over the arena as a massive gate began to grind open at the far end of the fighting pit, a gate larger than any that had opened before. "Behold the Titan of Terracon. None have faced it and lived." The ground trembled as something enormous moved in the darkness beyond the gate. Marcus stood his ground, 5 Nexus Warriors now forming a protective circle around him rather than threatening him, a development that seemed to enrage the overseer even further. As the massive shape emerged into the sunlight, even Marcus felt a flutter of apprehension in his chest. The beast that entered the arena was unlike anything he had ever encountered in his years as a xenobiologist. The mind's mastery, the Titan of Terracon, filled the arena with its presence. Standing nearly 5 meters tall, its body was a marvel of evolutionary engineering. 6 powerful limbs supported a torso covered in armored plates that shimmered with iridescent blues and greens. Its head featured 3 sets of eyes arranged in a triangular pattern, each glowing with an inner intelligence that belied its bestial appearance. Most impressive were the twin neural crests that extended from its skull, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that Marcus immediately recognized as a form of communication. This was no mindless beast bred for violence. This was a sentient being. The crowd had fallen completely silent, many standing to better witness the legendary creature. The Titan had appeared in the arena only twice before in living memory, and both times the sand had run red with the blood of dozens of competitors. 5 Nexus Warriors tensed, their weapons raised defensively as they maintained their protective formation around Marcus. He placed a gentle hand on the shoulder of the nearest warrior. "Stand down," he said quietly. "This isn't your fight." "But Master," the warrior began, using a term of respect that sent another ripple of shock through the watching crowd. "No, Master's here," Marcus corrected. "Just choices." He stepped forward beyond the circle of warriors and approached the Titan alone. The massive creature watched him with all 6 eyes, its neural crests flashing patterns that shifted from aggressive red to curious blue. Marcus stopped a respectful distance away and did something that caused gasps throughout the arena. He bowed deeply to the Titan. "I see you," he said in a clear voice. "I recognize your sentience and honor your existence." The Titan's head tilted, its neural crests now pulsing with patterns of gold and white. It made no move to attack, instead studying the small human before it with evident curiosity. From the Overseer's box came sounds of furious clicking and hissing. "Attack! Crush the human!" The Titan turned its massive head toward the Overseer's box, its neural crests flashing angry crimson. Then it deliberately turned back to Marcus and, to the astonishment of everyone watching, lowered its massive head, in what could only be interpreted as a return bow. "You understand?" Marcus said quietly. Not a question, but a realization. "How long have they kept you here? Away from your kind?" The neural crests flickered in complex patterns that Marcus studied, intently drawing on his years of xenobiological research. Though he couldn't fully decode the language, the emotional overtones were clear. Loneliness, resignation, and a deep, simmering resentment. "Kill him!" The Overseer's voice had taken on a note of desperation. "I command it!" The Titan rose too, its full height towering over Marcus. For a moment it seemed as though it might obey, its massive form tensing as if preparing to strike. The crowd held its collective breath. Then the Titan turned away from Marcus and faced the Overseer's box, directly. Its neural crests blazed with brilliant red light as it let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the arena. It was not just a sound of defiance, but a psychic projection of such intensity that many in the crowd clutched their heads in pain. Marcus felt it too, a wave of emotions not his own: rage, pain, and a fierce desire for freedom. But he had spent years training his mind through meditation and study, and he maintained his composure even as others around him cried out. "You defy me?" The Overseer's voice was shrill now. "Guards, subdue the beast." Armored Krell guards appeared at various points around the arena, raising weapons that crackled with electrical energy. Neural disruptors designed specifically to control the Titan. What happened next would be told and retold across 1,000 worlds for generations to come. Marcus raised his hand not toward the Titan but toward the guards. "Stop." His voice carried an authority that belied his position as a prisoner. "This ends now." The guards hesitated, caught between their ingrained obedience to the Overseer and the strange, compelling presence of the human who stood unafraid beside the most dangerous creature in the arena. Marcus turned in a slow circle, addressing not just the guards but everyone present. "Look around you. Is this justice? Is this honor? Sentient beings forced to fight and die for entertainment?" The crowd stirred uncomfortably. Many had never considered the moral implications of the spectacle they so eagerly consumed. They had been taught that the combatants were either criminals, deserving punishment, or beasts with no higher consciousness. "The Titan is a telepathic species," Marcus continued, his voice ringing out across the now silent arena. "It communicates through the neural patterns you see on its crests. It feels pain, loneliness, and the desire for freedom, just as you do." He gestured toward the Nexus Warriors who still stood in defensive formation nearby. "These warriors were created to fight, but they are capable of choice, of growth beyond their programming. I offered them respect and understanding, and they chose a different path." The Overseer stood trembling with rage. "Lies, human deception. Guards, seize him." But the guards did not move. Throughout the arena, a change was occurring, a shift in the collective consciousness of those present. The Titan's psychic projection had weakened the mental barriers many had built against empathy, and Marcus's words were finding fertile ground. "I came to your world as a scientist, seeking to understand, not to conquer," Marcus said, addressing the Overseer directly now. "That is the true strength of humanity, not our weapons or our aggression, but our endless curiosity and our capacity for compassion." He placed a hand on the Titan's massive foreleg. "This being has been imprisoned here for decades, forced to kill against its nature. The Shadowhounds earlier, they weren't retreating out of fear but recognition. They sensed that I meant them no harm, that I respected their existence." The Titan's neural crests pulsed with blue and gold patterns as it gently lowered its massive head beside Marcus. To everyone's astonishment, it allowed the human to touch one of its crests, establishing a direct telepathic connection. Marcus gasped as his mind was suddenly flooded with images and emotions. The Titan's homeworld, a beautiful planet of floating islands and crystal seas, its capture by Krell hunters, years of isolation and forced combat in the arena. But beneath the pain and loneliness was something unexpected, hope, kindled by the arrival of a being who saw it as more than a monster. "Its name," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, "is Luminaris, and it wants to go home." Throughout the arena, spectators began to stand, first a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Some were weeping, moved by the connection they were witnessing. Others looked ashamed, recognizing their complicity in the suffering before them. The overseer, sensing the shift in the crowd's mood, made a desperate move. "Kill them both! 5,000 credits to any who brings me the human's head." A few mercenary types in the crowd tensed, calculating the risk versus reward. But before any could act, the Titan, Luminaris, raised itself to its full height and emitted another psychic projection, this one carefully targeted. Every being in the arena suddenly felt what it was like to be imprisoned, to be forced to fight, to have one's very nature denied for the entertainment of others. The effect was immediate and profound. Throughout the stands, weapons clattered to the ground as mercenaries and spectators alike were overcome by the emotional impact. Many fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the shared experience of the Titan's suffering. "There is another way," Marcus called out, his voice carrying easily in the stunned silence that followed. "A way without bloodshed or domination. Humans learned this lesson centuries ago after nearly destroying ourselves with endless war. True strength lies not in conquering others but in understanding them." He turned to face the overseer directly. "Your empire is built on fear, but fear is a fragile foundation. Sooner or later, those you oppress will rise against you, not just here but across every world where the Krell maintain these arenas." The overseer seemed to shrink before the collective gaze of the crowd, his once imposing figure now appearing small and pathetic. With a screech of rage and fear, he turned and fled from his box, accompanied by a few loyal guards. Throughout the arena, a transformation was taking place. The remaining guards were laying down their weapons, some even freeing other creatures, being held for future combat. The Nexus Warriors had moved to stand beside Marcus and Luminaris, joined now by the Shadowhounds who had returned from their holding pens, sensing the change in the arena's energy. "What happens now?" asked one of the warriors, looking to Marcus with newfound respect. Marcus gazed around at the arena that had been built for death, but might now become something else entirely. "Now, we rebuild. We transform this place from an arena of death to a sanctuary of understanding." He placed his hand once more on Luminaris's neural crest, establishing the telepathic connection. "And we start by helping those who have been imprisoned here find their way home." In the days that followed, the Krell arena underwent a metamorphosis as profound as it was unexpected. Under Marcus's guidance and with the telepathic assistance of Luminaris, the former death pits became healing centers where creatures from across the galaxy could recover from their traumas before being returned to their natural habitats or, in the case of the engineered warriors, help to discover their own purposes beyond combat. The Krell overseer and his most loyal supporters fled the planet, but many of the common Krell remained, working alongside former prisoners and spectators to transform the arena complex into a center for interspecies cooperation and understanding. The Nexus Warriors, freed from their programming, discovered talents beyond fighting. Some became healers, others teachers, still others explorers. News of what had happened on Terracon 9 spread rapidly across the galaxy. Some dismissed it as human propaganda, but those who had witnessed the events firsthand carried the story to their homeworlds. How a single human, armed with nothing but compassion and understanding, had faced the deadliest creatures in the known universe, and they had bowed before him. 3 months after what was now being called the surrender of Terracon, Marcus stood on a viewing platform overlooking what had once been the fighting pit. Now it was a lush garden, filled with plants from dozens of worlds, tended by beings who had once been forced to kill each other for entertainment. Beside him stood Luminaris, its neural crests glowing with peaceful blue light. Tomorrow, a ship would arrive to take the Titan back to its homeworld, the coordinates provided through their telepathic connection. It would be an emotional farewell, but a necessary one. "You once asked why the Krell feared humans so much," said one of the former Nexus Warriors who had become Marcus's close friend and assistant. "I think I understand now." Marcus raised an eyebrow questioningly. "Other species conquer with weapons and force," the warrior explained. "But humans, you conquer with ideas, with empathy. That is much more dangerous to those who rule through fear." Marcus smiled, watching as a group of former spectators worked alongside former arena beasts to construct a new reflecting pool in the center of the garden. "We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to understand. And to be understood. Perhaps that is the most revolutionary idea of all," the warrior suggested. As the twin suns of Terracon 9 set beyond the former arena's walls, casting the garden in golden light, Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. He had come as a scientist seeking knowledge and had nearly been executed as a trespasser. Instead, he had become something neither he nor the Krell could have predicted. A bridge between worlds, a catalyst for change. And across the stars, on 1,000 worlds, beings of all kinds were beginning to whisper about the human who had stood alone and unarmed before the deadliest creatures in the galaxy, and how, one by one, they had surrendered without a fight. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. Because sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in dominating others, but in seeing them, truly seeing them, for what they are.